Hey everyone, Unnerved here again, back with another Star Wars Destiny video. And in this video, I am playing Pomaz against my opponent Crane Train. This is an elimination game. We are playing a best of 3 series, and it is for the top 64 players. So we are currently in elimination rounds, and this happened a few weeks ago. I'm doing voiceover commentating for the respect of my opponent, plus we were in voice communication constantly throughout the match. So a couple of things. I played Pomaz in this. I had a couple of prefaces with that. I like Pomaz as a deck a lot. I've played it a fair amount. I did not take it to my store championship, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, I think the deck has some very glaring weaknesses. I think some of those things are going to be coming out in short. The longer the championships go on, and the more people play against Pomaz, the more likely they are to find out what some of those problems are. Crane Train here is playing an Aurra Jango list, an Elite Aurra Sing, non-Elite Jango, and Crane is a good player, so I'm definitely concerned that this game could be very, very tight, or it can put out a sneaky amount of damage, and leaving Django around can really result in a kitted up Django that can quickly respond to the speed of the Pomaz play. The deck that I played in this is fairly upgrade light. I again, was putting a deck together pretty quickly. I didn't really anticipate throwing a lot of stuff, and so, uh, hindsight on it is something where I think, the more I play the deck, the more I learn the things that I want to have. So in my opening hand, I had a Maz's Goggles and I threw it away. I think probably retrospect on that, that's a mistake. Maz's Goggles really helps enable her ability and pose specials. So I think Goggles onto Maz are a very, very good thing to have. You can also goggle Poe, and I like doing that if I think my opponent's going to be blasting down Maz. But of course, I've got a really good solid opening hand. I've got both hit and runs. I've got a fast hands. I've got scavenge, and I've got a DL44. I'm not sure how many lists run scavenge on the Poe Maz, but I really like it for when my hand is devoid of certain particular card combinations, like stuff to throw. I can start digging for it. I can also dig for planetary uprisings that way, which is something that I really want. I won the roll off. I definitely don't want my opponent to have the carbon freezing chamber. I fast hands Poe. And then from there, I'm going to probably hit and run here, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm pretty sure I remember hit and running this. Again, this was recorded a couple of weeks ago. My opponent plays an Ascension gun on Jango, and I roll out Poe. With Poe rolled out, I get a special, which means I can fast hands the special right away. I get a DL44 to do 3 damage to Aurra Sing, and we're on our way. However, we got nothing else to throw with Poe here, so my opponent may be worried about that, and that's rightfully so. But what's going to happen is if Maz rolls a focus, I can now take Poe to the 3 side, and we've done 6 to Aurra turn 1. And I really like that open a lot. Jango response to Poe is double blanks. We're going to play. Yep, that was still his action because Jango was responding to Poe. So he goes to roll Aurra out, and Aurra rolls a little bit of damage here, I believe. And so we run the scavenge out, and this is what the dig does for me. It allows me to find different things. So there's a bowcaster. I can take the bowcaster into hand, which gives me the ability to throw a 4 damage for a resource. I like that. I did lose a sabotage. If my opponent's playing backup muscle, sabotage is a great counter card to that. We're going to see what happens here. He may have the ability to remove, like, this is what my opponent needs to do in this situation is remove the Poe die, because I could just flat claim and do 4 damage, and that would be enough for my turn. However, I'm going to probably get to roll Maz after his reroll here. All right, he picks up a little more damage. I don't have a defensive position or a dug in, anything along those lines. He picks up the 2 side from Jango, so he's going to deal some damage here. And I think when you deal damage like that, you got to go after Poe. but we can resolve 2 dice. So I do 1 to Aurra Sing. I pick up a resource, and it's back to my opponent to decide how he wants to resolve things out here. He probably can one-shot Maz. I don't remember what all his dice were, but yeah, I'm pretty sure he discards 2 cards, and he does 2, 4, 6, just 8 damage to Maz, which takes Maz out turn 1. I mean, that's incredible. That's exactly kind of how you want to manage this deck. It still leaves me open for the throne room, and I am going to do the bowcaster, which will do 4 damage to Aurra, and takes Aurra up to 7 out of her 10. Or excuse me, 8 out of her 10. And my opponent can't resolve the Ascension Gun, so I think he discards to reroll. He's debating it anyways. So losing Maz round 1 hurts, and there's no doubt that that could be problematic, especially not having the focus sides. But I pick up a Planetary Uprising, I pick up a rocket launcher, and I have the hit and runs. So we're going to hit and run in. This should be able to put Aurra on a Death Wish. I roll special, which is great. I rocket launcher for 4 damage. I think I only have to do 3, 6, 7, 8. So I can do the 2 and 2, and that kills Aurra and does 2 to Jango. So I think that's what we do there. Oh, nope. I guess we didn't do the math right, or on my part made a play mistake there, and didn't pick up the 2 damage on Jango, which I could have. I spend 2 to do a Planetary Uprising, I believe. Yep. Okay. All right. So it looks like, yeah, I don't think he's resolving damage there. My opponent also looks like he made a play mistake in that he did not use Jango's ability there in response. So I picked up 4 and did 6 damage to Jango here. Again, this is all pretty, SOR is pretty new here. And I'm out of the round, so he's got free reign to kit up Jango. We'll see if he moves on, but we only need to do 4 damage, so we just need Poe to roll a damage side and a Planetary to move into game 2. He picks up a Hunker Down, which is going to make things a little tougher on us. And not sure. He's got some other stuff. He's got an Arm to the Teeth. Okay. Picks up an Armor Plating for 1. Tanks Jango up a little bit. And we move into the next round. Okay. So draw into a defensive stance, which is really good. Another fast hands, probably don't need that. Another Planetary Uprising and a Maz's Goggles. Again, Maz's Goggles is really good here for, pushing down the focus sides to help with getting specials rolled here. That's one of the strengths, I think, of the deck. But we do 2 with the fast hands, so and actually what he's got to do is he's got to be dealt 2 or more. So I think we were talking about this, and I ultimately said you can't do that. You got to take the shield first, and then he takes 1 still, so he can't block that, but he'll be able to block the planetary or the next damage output because of the way it reads. He had the shield to absorb 1, he takes 1. And I just had to know that from looking at armor plating. It's got to block the damage, and this is where it's important to know how all the cards interact so that you don't have something like that occur, where he had essentially 2 more health than he should. So he's at 7 now, but armor plating essentially gives him 5, so I got to do 5, and I don't have 5 to kill this turn, but I do have 4 with the planetary uprising. So again, didn't respond, and I could have hit and run this turn. I didn't. I probably should have in retrospect because he's got a carbon freezing chamber. So now it's his action. He's going to discard that. He did respond with the Jango there, and he doesn't like you, so it makes my play much simpler. I'm going to play 2 to put a planetary uprising on the field, so now I got 2 planetaries. I can just claim unless he's going to claim early, which he might. But if he claims early, I'm able to set up a Maz's Goggles, another Fast Hands. I've got a lot of setup available. I think he's going to want to try to get rid of a Poe die over the claim early, but that will guarantee the win because I only have to do, well, it won't because of the armor plating. Yep, so it'll keep Jango alive for another turn. Dealt 2 damage, so I claim. He only takes 2 and puts Jango to 9. Okay. On the Hunt is a nice card. I I think, retrospectively looking at things, like my opponent probably, if he needed to set Django up, the action cheating's nice, but it's not so good if you're only rolling in 2 dice. And if you can set up a 3 or 4 die Django, yeah, he conceded game 1 and he's ready to go into game 2. So we're going to just reload and get started with game 2. Had a couple of different Pomaz decks I was in testing on early on, and this is the one that I came up with. There was Pomaz method there was a user on TTS that had it. And I looked at his deck and kind of used it as inspiration, so I called it the Pomaz method. But then I made some changes. Some of the changes I made in this deck that user had, that user was running. I think they were running a couple more things to throw, and I added a little bit more removal to this deck in the form of defensive stance, and then I also changed it out and added in a new hope for those games where it's down to just Poe, and you're like, well, you know, um, if it's down to just Poe, you're not going to get as many specials resolved, and so you want to be able to get stuff out on the battlefield. And so New Hope gives me the opportunity to possibly take one of those U-wings, thermal detonators, something like that, and get it on the battlefield where I can take advantage of the specials from them more consistently. So that also works really well if Poe goes down and you go long game, but the deck really does falter once Poe is down. So I feel like while it's tempting to blast Maz down because she's kind of the head of the snake, if you will, if Maz doesn't have something set up on her, she's really not going to do anything to an opponent. So yeah, he gets to decide this game, and I think we're going to take Separatist base this time. Yep. If I'm not mistaken, that's what we're discussing there is the fact that since he was a loser of last game, he gets to choose the battlefield. So we choose his. Yep. And I put shields on Maz. Knowing that he wanted to go hard for Maz, I shielded her up to give her a little more health. Again, I still think that my opponent at the end of the day wants and needs to um, take out uh, Poe. Like last turn, he did 8 damage to Maz in turn 1. He could have potentially done enough damage to kill Poe, and then Maz in that last game really would have been struggling. And I know a lot of people say, well, the answer is to get Cunning into the deck. Well, once Poe goes down, Cunning really doesn't do much for you either. And so I feel like, you know, we have to, and we do 3 to each with the detonator, which is a pretty brutal start. And then he's rolling Jango as part of the ambush action. And then I still have an action left. Okay, so we're able to do 4 more to Aurra, putting her down to 7. So we didn't kill. Yeah, there we go. Didn't kill Aurra here, but we did 10 damage turn 1. Pretty solid open. I mean, Falcon Thermal is really good. It's not as good in the 2 character list, obviously, as it is the 3 character list, and obviously a U-wing Thermal is a better open with the 3 character list. But you know, my opponent gets to do some damage here. I think they're showing somewhere around 3, 5, 6, 7 damage, I believe. Maybe not. I thought there was more. So I disrupted both of my resources. I took a resource back. He's playing Relentless Pursuit, which I think is for the Guardian characters in the deck. And I like it in Aurra Sing Jango. I think it's a good card for that, particularly because you can help prolong Aura's life a little bit longer, and she's the real damage dealer in this matchup. But I feel like Aurra Sing Jango can be a little glass cannon-y if you don't have the right stuff. So he focuses. I believe he goes to focus to 2 damage side. I had claimed on his focus action, so and then he had discarded 1/4 portion, I believe, to resolve and do 3, 4 damage, 5 damage to Poe, and then we'd stand back up. Still got the hit and run here. So he plays a hunker down on Aurra, give her a shield. It's kind of important because like Poe Maz, like most of Poe Maz is about dealing 3 damage. You know, either whether that's from Poe's die, whether that's from what he can throw, whatever it may be. So here's a good example of like not having anything in the hand. I do have a sabotage in case a backup muscle comes down. I've got a defensive position in case Aurra rolls particularly well. And I got a scavenge. So I could go for it, but you know, we want to bluff my opponent into being worried about it. And it is possible that I could deal 4 damage here just on the roll, but I roll double blanks. So no special roll this time. He's going to activate Jango in response. Probably should have hit and run. I tend to find myself forgetting about hit and run when I play this deck because I'm thinking about so many things. And I think that's a common thing that players can make mistakes on because I could have had Maz out, potentially rolled a focus side, gotten 3 damage off, and pinged Aurra Sing down for 1. You know, get her down to 2 remaining. And then I could have scavenged into potentially a planetary uprising, something of that nature. But we slow played it here. Maybe that's just because I didn't have something to throw, so I felt like that was an idea. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, that was a dug in and not a defensive position. So we pull the dug in. We play it since we have control of the battlefield, and we put 3 shields on Poe, which effectively puts him down to still having 10 health remaining against a ranged deck. Whereas Vibro Knife's there, the dug-ins aren't as good, and Poe really is playing on just 12 health, plus if you get field medic or something of that nature. All right, so we lost all 3 shields, and Poe went from 5 to 10. So we took quite a bit of damage there, 8 damage. And he discards a bait and switch for it, as well as an electroshock, I believe. I think we're starting to think about, Poe's survivability here. What do we risk and face, and what do we do? So we're going to scavenge, yep. And so scavenge allows us to go through there. We find a planetary and a thermal. We take thermal into our hand. The reason we're doing that is because I can deal 3 damage to each. That's going to put Jango at 7. It's going to put Aurra Singh at 9. And if Maz rolls a single damage, we can kill Aurra, and 1 more point of damage to Jango means Jango's only got 2 life remaining going into the end of the turn. My opponent here probably should have used Hunker Down. Um, it's easy when the onslaught's coming at you to make play mistakes and feel like you've got to rush your play, like that you've got to push hard to be faster. But you can kind of slow play Pomaz too, as long as you know your characters are safe. And I think that's a real common thing for everybody to be worried about is, oh man, I got to go faster and I got to be better. And the reality of it is that's just not the case. Like Pomaz here, I mean, he's going to hunker down now, which, see, he could have done a turn before, and it would have maybe mattered a little bit just from a perspective of keeping Aurra alive a little bit longer. You know, um, so we resolve 1 at Jango instead. And we do that because now Jango's at 8, Aurra's at 9. He's going to claim the Separatist base. I'll put 1 on Aurra, or on Maz, excuse me. Reroll Poe. Looking for a little damage here. We don't get damage here, I don't think. I discarded the Sabotage. Get the Disrupt again. Stand back up and draw some more cards. Now we got a Bowcaster. That's definitely kill territory. We also have the new Orders play, which is really good for us because we can use the claimability of the battlefield. What I've come to find in later games, if I have the resources to play a Bowcaster or a DL44, I should just spend those resources and do that instead of throwing it. And the reason being is because Pomaz suffers in the late game once the cards that you've been throwing falter. So if you can kind of withstand the early turns and survive, there's a very solid chance that Pomaz can't finish. And it's particularly problematic against second chance ammo belt decks, force illusions. It's particularly difficult against um, Rise Again, some of those things. So I think that's what makes the matchup for something like a Palpatine or somebody of that nature. It makes it really favorable because yeah, I'm not going to resolve fast hands here, I don't think, because I want Maz's dice to come up. Uh, but he's rolling Jango in response. Okay, now I get my ambush action. And this is where I think the play matters here. So I have a couple of options. With my ambush, I can roll Maz, which will give me the ability to possibly roll a focus and do damage, or I can New Orders it, do 4 damage, kill Aurra. Now that Jango's rolled out, I take no damage, and we have free reign to go into another turn, I think. And possibly Maz could still roll out and kill Jango. It's definitely a possibility. So yep, I do spend 2 here, and I play New Orders, which allows me to flip and claim the battlefield, but I don't get to claim it, like actually own or control it. So my defensive stance doesn't matter, but I resolve that and I do 4 damage to um, Yeah, I did one to each. I used the AoE on the bowcaster, and with the AoE, I was able to take Jango to 9 and kill Aurra because it was unblockable, one unblockable to each, and it makes it pretty difficult. Now my opponent has to claim here. He's got to be worried about the possibility that I have another thing to throw and just kill Jango. Oop, he deleted my Poe die. Okay, and I think I had the disrupt side showing. Yeah, I did. All right. And that killed Poe. So now we go into it with 1 health on Jango. So all I got to do is have Maz roll a focus into her 1 range, and that's GG. But if the game was tighter, and I didn't have to do that, I just got the 1. So that was the end of the 2-game series. So if it gets tight, this is where Poe Maz can be problematic, right? Like if I have nothing set up on Maz going into the late game, things can be trouble. So something to think about is if your opponent isn't setting up Maz, then and you're going for Poe, then you're probably in good shape to pull out a late game victory. So this was round 1 of the elimination bracket. I will be posting round 2 and subsequent rounds as I advance through them, and I will only post them after my opponents have been eliminated from the tournament. Thank you so much. I appreciate you watching. If you like this content, feel free to subscribe. Hit the little bell notification icon to get notified when I upload new content, and we'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.